This book has been on my bookshelf for quite a while. I had to get my own copy because I use it so often. I've been a school librarian for a while, and I use this book every year. And I read to my students as a way of introducing the Choose Your Own Adventure type books. There are many of them published. This is, I think, the first that I ever knew about. And the reason I picked this one is that there's many, many choices, and I get to pick different students to make the choice. It's a great one because there's so many choices. So if you're somebody who declares that you hate reading, this is a great one to get started with because you can read an entire story in half an hour, even less time. And then you can go back and make different choices to find out what would happen if you made choice A instead of B. There are 28 possible endings. Some of them you live, some of them you die. I know one of them you face a cannon, another one you realize it was a dream because you had a very odd sandwich the night before. I've read this book many times. I've read all the versions. It's a great story. And it's called The Abominable Snowman by R.A. Montgomery. So the way Choose Your Own Adventures books work is that you start reading and you just do whatever the bottom of the page says. And most of them have this type of page in the beginning because it kind of gives you a little bit about the story you're about to read and a reminder that you are the main character. It's not somebody with a name. It's literally you. Beware and warning. This book is different from other books. You and you alone are in charge of what happens in the story. There are dangers, choices, adventures, and consequences. You must use all of your numerous talents and much of your enormous intelligence. The wrong decision could end in disaster, even death. But don't despair. At any time, you can go back and make another choice, alter the path of your story, and change its results. You and your best friend Carlos have traveled to Nepal in search of the fabled Yeti, or Abominable Snowman. Last year, while the two of you were mountain climbing in South America, a guide told you about the legendary creature, and you haven't stopped thinking about the Yeti since. Carlos arrived and went straight into the mountains when a Yeti sighting was reported. He hasn't been heard from in 3 days. A late monsoon storm has moved in and the mountains are almost impassable. You know Carlos will depend on you to do the right thing. But what is it? Dun, dun, dun. That's the introduction and just a little bit about how you are the hero. And so I'll read a little bit, at least until we get to the first choice. And then I really hope this made you curious enough to try to go out and find this copy. You might be able to find it in your local library. I have no idea how much it would be if you had to go to a bookstore, but it's definitely worth the read. You are a mountain climber. 3 years ago, you spent the summer at a climbing school in the mountains of Colorado. Your instructor said you had natural skills as a climber. You made rapid progress, and by the end of the summer, you were leading difficult rock and ice climbs. That summer, you became close friends with a boy named Carlos. The two of you made a good climbing team. Last year, you and he were chosen to join an international team. The expedition made it to the top of 2 unclimbed peaks in South America. One night on that expedition, the group was seated around the cook tent at the base camp. The expedition leader, Franz, told stories of climbing in the Himalayas, the highest mountains of the world. It says turn to page 2, then to page 4. And the page numbers are at the top of the page. So page 2 shows the Himalayan mountains with the different names of all the different peaks. Everest is in the page. We'll turn to page 4. The Himalayas form a great natural wall between India and China, with Nepal tucked in among the peaks. Everest, K2, and Annapurna are the best-known mountains in the Himalayas. These and many other peaks have been climbed. Still others lie in remote areas where few humans have gone. There, said Franz, in the high valleys beneath the snowfields, lives the Yeti, sometimes called the Abominable Snowman. The Yeti is said to be a huge beast, Franz tells you, perhaps a cross between a gorilla and a human. People cannot agree on what it is. Is the Yeti dangerous? Carlos asked. Franz shrugged. Some say it is. Other people say the Yeti is very gentle. Have you ever seen one? You inquire. No, almost no one has. The best proof of the Yeti's existence is a set of very large footprints discovered in the 1950s by a British expedition. No one has ever photographed one that I have heard, Franz answers. But the stories still persist. So let's go to the next page. You and Carlos decide then and there to find the Yeti. When you return from South America, the two of you raise money from the International Foundation for Research into Strange Phenomena. Your goal, proof positive that the Yeti exists. You will find and photograph the Yeti. So that right there gives you the goal for the story. So like if you are able to do that goal, you've won the adventure. That is what brings you to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. Your problems, though, have already begun. 2 days ago, Carlos left by helicopter to look over the terrain near Mount Everest. The helicopter returned without him. The pilot told you that Carlos decided to stay up at the Everest base camp to check out a report that a Yeti had been seen. He had a radio transmitter, but you've received no word from him. The weather turned bad and radio communication was interrupted. You have an appointment to speak with R.N. Runnell, the Director of Expeditions and Mountain Research, and an authority on the Yeti. He knows of your plans. You need his help with official permits for the expedition. He will also have good advice and information. But what about Carlos? So here's our decision. If you decide to cancel your meeting with Runnell and search for Carlos, turn to page 7. If you feel that Carlos is okay and go ahead with your plan to meet Runnell, turn to page 8. So if we go to page 7, there's a picture of the helicopter, base camp, and what happens. Or you go to page 8, and it says go to page 10, and then you have choices, and there's a picture of tigers. And I can't keep going because I don't want to make the decision. I admittedly have read this book many times, so I know which way these decisions go, and I think it would be better for you guys to pick up a copy if you're intrigued. Again, this is Amanda reading you the first bit of The Abominable Snowman by R.A. Montgomery. Happy reading!